Welcome back to Dirty Barry. It's been a long time since I've made a video. In the meantime, I've actually moved into a new house and workshop, and I've established a lot of new equipment over the time. So this is my most recent acquisition. It's a Lux Cut drill mill. It's a DM45, so I'd say it's similar sort of size to one of those Chinese or Taiwanese Rongfu 45 mills. It does actually have quite a few high quality features to it. I believe it's actually just a rebranded Optimum mill, so that's the ones that are sold in Germany. One thing I have found is there's not a huge amount of lighting available in my garage, so I've recently purchased a load of LED batten lights for the ceilings, but I still struggle to get enough light on the milling machine near where the vise is. So I like to mount an LED light coming off the side of the head or the column. There's already a couple of holes on the side of the head, so I can just tap them out to a slightly larger size and make a mount the LED light to it. Now we're on a flexible arm. I'll take you over to the workbench now and I'll show you the flexible arms. So this is the LED light in question. It was purchased from AliExpress. It was given a rating of 90 watts. I received it, I plugged it in, and I was like, it's not particularly bright. So I put a multimeter on it and found it's actually only drawing 1 amp at 12 volts, so that comes out to 12 watts. So it was a little bit disappointing, but it's alright. It's actually going to be perfect for the milling machine. It was originally intended to light up this desk. So I pulled a couple of pieces out of the scrap bin. I've got this block of aluminium. This looks like an ideal starting point for making the mount. I've got a couple of screws. I've got the various fixtures that came with the LED, and we've also got this flexible arm. I'm not sure what this is from. I believe it's probably some sort of a microphone stand or something. So this end here, that was originally some Imperial thread, but I've rethreaded it to M8 for now. I'm not sure what I'm going to do about this end here. I'm probably just going to put a pin through it and we'll mount it directly into the block. So it's hollow, so you can run the wires the whole way through. And so it'll be quite good. I'll just have to extend the wires on the end of the LED, and I'll have to get a 12 volt power supply out of my pile of supplies, or even 24 volts. I believe this is rated up to 30 volts. And yeah, I've got the 2 screws for mounting to the machine. And I've also got to come around and tap out the holes on the end of this, or just one hole at least, so that it suits the thread on the end of the flexible arm. I'm hoping that the light won't be too heavy on the arm, but we'll see what happens. You can always cut the light in half. I believe the LED stuff is simple enough. I might just have to drop down the voltage supply. Alright, so we'll get to it. So first thing is I need to come up with a design. How am I going to mount this to the mill? And how am I going to counterbore it, allow the wiring to go through, and how am I going to mount the arm onto the block. Right, let's get to it. So here we are, looking at the side of the milling machine. We zoom in, we can see that there's 2 existing holes on the side of the head. If I come around with a drill them out, tap them by hand, set them to M8, that will give us a good starting point for mounting. So they don't go directly into the gearbox, they're actually through holes, or at least one of them's a through hole and the other one just goes into the thick wall of the casting, so there's not going to be any risk of leakage. Hopefully the arm won't be too annoying with the handle in place, but we can always make a different setup in the future if we need to. Right, the holes were successfully drilled and tapped. It's a surprisingly tight area to get into with the tapping wrench, because you've got the big boss here for a quill handle. So now we can move on to the next step. So by my best estimate, those holes are 18mm apart, and since I've done with M6, I can drill M6 clearance hole and use a counterbore and make it all fit. So we'll see how it goes. shiniest surface finish I've ever seen, but it'll do. I'll give it a quick deburr and we'll move on. So back at the table with recently squared up stock, I have marked and punched for our holes that we're going to put on the front face. So we've got the two M6 counterbores and we've got a counterbore M12 which should just about work with the arm. So I'll take it back over to the mill, we'll drill and counterbore and we'll see how it goes. And then afterwards we'll need to add a cross hole for a wiring, but that shouldn't be too difficult. So it looks like the holes were in fact 18mm apart. So I've drilled and counterbored all three holes. I don't think I'll actually need to do a cross drill. What I can do is I can drill straight through a casting and then run the power wires for the light through the same holes as power wires for the motor. So that should actually be quite nice. So I've also done a nice decorative chamfer around the top edge. So next job is adding a cross drill for a retaining grub screw to hold this at the desired orientation. Right, now that the majority of the block itself is done, I'm going to need to modify the LED housing. So in order to tap the M8 through hole in here, I'm going to need to remove the cap, and to remove the cap I'll need to desolder the wires. Right, I've now desoldered the wires from the end cap and cut the excess wire off, and I've used a back end of a M5 tapping drill to find the centre of the hole. So now we can drill it out with a 6.8mm drill bit and tap it to M8. As I somewhat expected, the LED light bar was too heavy for the arm, so I had to go all artisan makes on it and cut it in half with a hacksaw. So now I'm just going to tidy up the ends with the end mill. So this is a result of today's wombling adventure with Barry. We now have an arm with a light on it. The light has been shortened and it still works, but next job will be to wire it up and make a switch for it. Or if there's any suggestions on how to stiffen it or get around these problems, please feel free to advise. So it's got a nice chamfer around the edge, got two cap screws, and we've got a locking set screw on the side to hold the arm in place. At the very least, this could potentially one day be used for a coolant system.